Good evening. You're watching the weekend edition of the Urban Debate with me, Aarti Subramaniam. India's most successful skipper and one of the most successful captains in the world, Virat Kohli, has announced his resignation as Test captain. In an Instagram post, Virat has said everything has to come to a halt at some stage, and for him as the Test captain of India. He said, and I quote, "I have absolute clarity in my heart and I cannot be dishonest to my team," unquote. After a serious defeat in South Africa, which was capped off with the Cape Town Test match, a match where Kohli was venting out his ire against the broadcasters, there were questions about his decision-making, but this resignation was not anticipated. Much like his resignation from T20 captaincy and his removal as ODI skipper, this one is likely to trigger intense speculation. But make no mistake about it, Virat as skipper has led India to some historic highs, and his contribution to Indian cricket is not something that can be written off. Even though his on-field aggression has left several unimpressed, his legacy and his unexpected resignation is what we're going to be discussing on the weekend Urban Debate. To start off, I just have former Indian cricketer Syed Kirmani, an absolute legend of the game himself, joining us. Mr. Kirmani, your first reactions, your first thought when you heard this news of Virat's resignation?
It was a big surprise to me for such a dynamic captain who we have always known, right, who has been a great model to the youngsters of today. And all of a sudden, he announces his retirement as a captain, which was a big surprise. I think this should not have happened. You got to be very positive in your approach. You should know your responsibility. Of course, he knows everybody knows his responsibilities, you see. And at the same time, apparently there are a lot of, points which can be pointed out. Probably one of the points is that he was not very successful in the consistency of his batting ability. I suppose that got him under a little negativity, which should not have happened. You see, and then you cannot be a bad loser. You have to take it in your strides that this game has its glorious uncertainties, and you win some and you lose some. You cannot be saying that I am the winning captain at all times. I want to beat all the records of other captains of different countries. No, you cannot be thinking in that fashion at all. So on those basis, I think this was not a right decision. He should have been more positive. He is a role model to the youngsters who he should be grooming to take over from him in the time to come. Not immediately, because all these youngsters who are in the team right now need to establish themselves with good, consistent performances, which they are lacking at the moment. I think the team management and the selection committee and the captain should have a strong chat with these youngsters, and not to get complacent about not to take their places for granted. I think this is what has happened, and which has led Virat Kohli to take up a decision which he should not have, and I think he should retain himself. It was just that matter of coming back with positivity and to booster the youngsters to have good consistency in their performances, and have to talk to them very strongly, not to take their places for granted.
Mr. Kirmani, of course, many of us shocked by that, but we also, while we sit and try and decipher and distill what led to the sudden resignation, we also can't forget the fact and look back at the rearview mirror and say that Virat Kohli's contribution to Indian cricket and the legacy that he leaves behind is something that we as Indian cricket fans need to cherish and really need to appreciate, controversy aside.
Yes, I think they should realize all those things, and Virat himself should realize that he has done a great job as a captain, as a player, right from coming up from the under-19 as a captain, right? So on all these bases, I think he should be realizing that he shouldn't chicken out saying that just because he has lost the series against the South Africans. You see, you cannot just chicken out and say, "Bhai, no." You cannot give excuses that I'm in a bad form. I've got too much of burden on my shoulders. No, 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 no. That's not the way to react to a loss of series against the South Africans.
Well, Mr. Kirmani, thank you so much for speaking to Mirror Now. We have actually a very good panel of guests, so if you wish to stay on and contribute anytime you do wish to, I'd really appreciate that. But otherwise, thank you so much for speaking to Mirror Now. Joining us, we have... Yes, yes, sir.
Yes. You go ahead with your other gentlemen who are on your channel who wants to opine their opinion.
Okay, so Mr. Kirmani, thank you. Yes, thank you so much for speaking to Mirror Now. Goodbye. Charu Sharma, sports commentator, Vedam Jaishankar, sports journalist, and Jamie Alter also join us this evening. On a lighter note, Charu, I just want to tell you, on the 1st of January, if I remember, we spoke and we were discussing on this show that, we're discussing an old controversy because the Virat versus BCCI fight was still raging. And when I was wrapping that up, I said, Charu, maybe in this new year, we have some new controversies to speak about.
Well, yeah, you have your wish. Well, it's not exactly a controversy, but, you might also remember me saying in the past, and by the way, I must quickly thank Kiri for allowing us this time. Thank you, Kiri. I did mention in the past several times that such things are installment programs. And when Kohli did give up his T20 captaincy, I said this is an installment plan. He'll give up his ODI captaincy soon, and eventually, of course, the Test captaincy as well. So that has happened, perhaps a lot more compressed in terms of time than Kohli might have wanted. And had he won this series, he would have had the necessary boost, should we say, to say, yeah, I think I will continue with the torture of this job, because it's a crown of thorns, without doubt. So is, by the way, being a coach. But he has done this. Let's not talk about him stepping off on a low, because he knows, what is he made of? What is his DNA? It's confidence, self-confidence. There's no erosion of self-confidence here. Perhaps just a bigger, better realization that I don't need this kind of extraneous responsibility anymore. I've done enough and more than the country expected of me. And like so many other very good cricketers before him, let's just take one name, Sachin Tendulkar. Why don't I just focus on my batting and make myself, perhaps the best batsman in the world in contemporary times? I don't need this extra burden. I've handled it for very long. I've shown people that I can handle it. And I'm going to take it easy now, allow other people to get on there. And maybe one final realization after 7 years, that you really are only as good as the team that you have. You can't bowl for everybody. You can't bat for everybody. You can't catch for everybody. It just leaves people a little frustrated. And maybe there's a touch of frustration here in Virat right now.
Well, Charu, I don't think you can't say that this is not a controversy. And Jamie, let me take this to you, both in terms of, one, the timing, and two, whether this was warranted. Is the timing a surprise? Did anyone anticipate this coming? And was it really needed?
Tells you that no one saw this coming. I was, after a day of work, I stepped out in the Delhi winter just for a brief walk, and I had not taken 100 steps before the phone started to buzz. Look, this is a big surprise. I'm just wondering, and I think Charu rightfully talks about the role that Virat Kohli will have when he's freed of the captaincy as a batsman. But, I know there's going to be 101 conspiracy theories going around, Aarti. I just wonder, is this something that Virat Kohli he really wanted to do? Hence the timing, We've seen MS Dhoni do this midway through a tour and all the hullabaloo that followed his decision. This has just come literally 24 hours after India lost the series. Many of us believe were expected to win. Man to man, you compare Virat Kohli's team with a very inexperienced, churning South Africa, and people said that this is their easiest chance to win. It didn't happen. Sure, Virat Kohli is hurting. We saw in his press conference yesterday, Aarti, you felt sorry. He looked like a drained, fatigued man. But how much of this was actually Virat Kohli's choice, I'm not so sure. I just think this goes back to how he found out about the ODI captaincy hardly a month ago. I think a lot of what's happened off-field has led to this decision here. And, for once, I'm going to say I actually feel sorry for Virat Kohli.
So, Jamie, you do feel that he was probably nudged out? Is that what you're saying? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not saying nudged out, Aarti. I'm saying all that's happened, and it just goes back to the last time I was talking to you here on this channel. We talked about, and I said how It was totally just a messy situation by the BCCI on the eve of a major test series in a country we all know no Indian team has ever won a series. The timing of that one line in a standard press release and how the whole miscommunication, mismanagement how it's going to affect Virat Kohli. How is it affecting Virat Kohli? The answer is right in front of us, Aarti.
Right. Now, Vedam, Virat Kohli is known for his aggression. It's one of the reasons I think people either absolutely love him or absolutely hate him. But will his lasting memory, at least that image of him crouched, yelling into a mic against the broadcasters, that is something that perhaps doesn't behove him. It is not something that, I'm sure even he looks back perhaps and thinks that maybe that was not necessary.
Maybe you could also see it as a last straw, because he definitely was hounded out of the job. There's no doubt about it. He was hounded out. Let's not couch into various kind words. He was hounded out of the job. And I think BCCI should understand what it has done. Maybe it's done this deliberately. I won't even put it past them. Maybe it's done it deliberately. But they've achieved a result that they wanted. But look at Virat Kohli. He has been the most inspirational captain we've ever had. There's no captain ever in Indian cricket who's been as inspirational as Virat Kohli. And don't forget that he didn't have 4 or 5 top batsmen around with him. He had to go virtually plow a lonely furrow till maybe Cheteshwar Pujara up to a certain extent. But otherwise, when it came to Test cricket, there was nobody else really for him to back him. But what he had was great spirit and great fighting spirit. And I think he imbibed that into the rest of the team. Nobody in the team wanted to let him down. Whether it was a number 10 batsman, number 9 batsman, we saw it in Australia, we saw it in England. Even the reserves were willing to play well. And that is the kind of inspiration he's had. Every single young cricketer in India wants to be like Virat Kohli. That's Virat Kohli's legacy. He's done a great job. He's been an inspirational captain. And this is not the way that we look down or we hound out our heroes. And it's an unfortunate day for Indian cricket because what has happened, it's actually a controversy. Whether we like it to say it or not, it is a controversy. In less than 2 to 2.5 months, you have got rid of your most successful captain. You got rid of him in every format of the game and virtually finished him off. I don't know what sort of a spirit he now has. Have you broken the back of the camel? Have you really done that? And I hope not, because like Charu said, I think he's got a lot to offer as a batsman. But, nobody ever carried the kind of burden that he was carrying. And it's a tragedy that one of your most successful captain has to be handled this way. And he is not the first to quit. Rahul Dravid himself quit after that England tour. He had had enough of the shenanigans of the chairman of the selection committee. So he just walked out at that time. And he didn't tell anybody. Virtually, he surprised everybody by quitting. Dhoni did it, and now Virat Kohli is doing it. And I think it's a sad
But Vedam, would you say, though, that the transition, you mentioned both Dhoni and you've mentioned Dravid, the transition from Dhoni to Virat or from Dravid to Dhoni was far less, it was far smoother than what we're witnessing right now. As a transition, as handing over the baton goes, it wasn't mired in this kind of controversy.
Definitely, the transition was much, much lesser. But let's look at it this way. Both Dhoni and Virat Kohli have been around as captain for more than 7 years. So if they're going to look at another captain, I hope we are able to choose a captain who will last for 7 years and not one of the favorites of the BCCI who will last maybe for a year or 2. We need to get a young captain, groom him with the job. Why I mentioned the word grooming is the next series is against Sri Lanka at home. It's easier to groom somebody at home and, ensure that he carries on. And there is somebody like Virat Kohli around to hold his hand and help him around. I think we need to play this smart at least now. We've made a mess of it so far. At least now let's play it smart and ensure we are able to get a good young captain who can stand and serve the team for a long time rather than looking at short-term gains or wanting to, play hero to somebody.
Yeah, we mentioned making a mess of it. Charu, trust me, I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow the BCCI comes out and says that we were as surprised as the rest of you because Virat didn't tell us or we had no inkling that he was going to resign.
Listen, Vedam has a much longer nose for all of this than I do. And I know I'm going to sound my usual naive self because I can't spot any controversy or nothing. I just spot a little bit of irritation in this whole process. And Virat has said, I don't need this anymore. I'm going. I'd be very surprised, of course, pleasantly so. It's always nice to be proved wrong. When some conspiracy theory comes out and somebody in the board says, yeah, we talked to him and then we said this and we said that and that's why he resigned. I don't know. Maybe there's a big story behind this. I don't see it. I just see individual frustration here and maybe realization, like I said, of the fact that I can't really control the fortunes of this team or any team, which brings me, of course, to my favorite hypotheses, which we know we don't have time for. And when you have a 5-day show, then we can all be on it, about the whole efficacy and the need for a captain in cricket. We're all sort of looking at it from a very conventional angle about, oh, captain, my captain, and I can't move a muscle without my captain. But if the captain was so powerful a figure, he'd bowl and he'd bowl everybody out in 10 balls and he'd bat and he'd get 10,000 runs not out every time. It doesn't happen. The whole efficacy of a captain for a very senior national team is limited. And a lot of people, of course, love the hierarchy of it all. Oh, now I'm a senior player, now I'm a vice captain, now I'm a captain. It's a great privilege to be captain of a country where, you know, the sport is religion. So you are the head of the religious entity. But, you know, you can only do that much and no more. And ultimately, it becomes a personality thing. You can love Kohli, you can hate him, you can like him or not, or what all his ways, his personal attitudes and his character and his personality. But in terms of taking the team forward, I mean, no batsman's going to say, who's the captain today? All right, Kohli, let me score 100. Oh, it's so-and-so else. Let me get out for 0. Or the bowler says, yeah, it's Kohli's the captain. I don't like him, so I'm going to go for 6 every ball. No, it's just everybody knows their job. The captain has one. He can influence it to an extent. He can certainly influence some kind of attitude in the team. But when are we going to stop this massive flooding of attention on the captain of the cricket team? I mean, he's just one of the 11. And he'd better pull his own weight.
Well, Charu,
if he isn't, then he should leave.
It is said to be the most difficult job in the country after being Prime Minister. And I think there is a huge burden to carry for everybody. Jamie, of course, Charu is not really willing to get into controversies or conspiracy theories. But I have one for you. This is not me saying it. No, this is not me saying it. I just have one thing which stood out for me in the resignation letter. And you tell me what you make of it. In that resignation letter, there was no mention of Rahul Dravid, who has just taken over recently.
Direct. Look, we can all join dots and we can come to our own conclusions. Look, it is not perhaps surprising that this happened barely 5 weeks after Ravi Shastri vacated the post of, or he had no option but to leave owing to the rules. But again, there was always going to be this: how is Virat Kohli going to deal with Dravid? They're very two different personalities. You know, would Ravi Shastri have backed Virat Kohli, Ashwin, and KL Rahul for the way they spoke into the mics? We can assume yes. Would Rahul Dravid have looked on happily? Absolutely not. That's just not the man's style. But I'm not going to look too much into the Rahul Dravid Virat Kohli relationship. It's still barely a month old. They're both legends of Indian cricket in their own right. And like Vedam sir was saying, when Rahul Dravid left the captaincy, he also was fed up of the system, the process. He wasn't happy. And I think exactly like Charu said, to some degree, we have to respect the option that Virat Kohli just didn't feel like. He woke up this morning and said, you know what? I don't feel happy. I don't feel secure. I don't feel whatever it is in the role that I love doing, and it's just not working. But I do back my word that something in this was not entirely about Virat Kohli's decision. I have no doubt that all that transpired off the field in the last 1 month have weighed down on Virat Kohli and led to his decision hardly an hour ago.
But Jamie and Vedam can weigh in on this. I don't think it's just the last couple of months, because there is a pattern here where there has been a lot of palace intrigue about the happenings in the dressing room, whether or not everyone is on the same page. Of course, small disagreements here and there might happen, but there was this constant talk of a rift. There is a constant talk of players not getting along with each other.
See, when you have mature adults who are all intelligent, definitely there will be some sort of a difference of opinion. I mean, you shouldn't look too much into it. Even within a family, if you are there for some time, there'll be some scraps and fights and difference of opinion. So I think that's part of it. It's how you are able to solve that and how you're able to move ahead that really counts. And if you look at the performance of the Indian team for the last 2 to 3 years, whatever has been the difference behind the scenes, they have carried themselves out brilliantly. You know, they have fought as a unit and won the match. I think that's what counts. But what has happened between the board and the captaincy issue, especially like Jamie said, just before the start of a series, did you need this kind of pressure to be thrown on your captain? Did you need that? You could have waited maybe till the end of this series, but you didn't do that. You straight away stripped him of his captaincy. And is he going in the right frame of mind on a tough tour of South Africa? Not just him, the whole team. They didn't need this controversy. You have thrust the controversy on them. You have thrust some sort of mental pressure. It looks like the BCCI was playing mental games against its own captain. That's how it looked from outside. And it's a sad day for Indian cricket that BCCI is so poorly handled that it needs to play mental games against its own captain. And we've seen that. We don't know. Maybe the series would have been won. Maybe it would have been drawn if they were in a better frame of mind, if they had handled things better. We don't know. It could have happened. It might not have happened. But the fact is, the BCCI has not contributed towards this situation. And that's the sad part. They should have been much better handling the situation. They've had so much of experience, but they've done nothing about it. And they've brought it into such a sorry impasse that your finest ever captain, your most successful captain, is going out in such a terrible manner.
Wanted to come in. Yes, Jamie.
After the BCCI removed their most successful ODI captain, he then held a press conference in which he sort of made it very, very uncomfortable for Saurav Ganguly and the board. Now again, literally a day after this has happened, he's now gone and done it without letting anyone know. There is no bigger indication that Virat Kohli is not entirely happy with what's happening than his press conference after the ODI team was announced and after this has now happened.
Yes, yes, Jamie. And also, of course, we're talking about the BCCI here. They don't have the best track record on this. And as you said, somebody like a Saurav Ganguly, we always think that when a sports person, a cricketer himself is heading an organization, they'll be better run because they understand the plight of the players. It's not just a bureaucrat who's running the entire affair.
Cricket, Aarti, it is a myth that if you played a sport at the highest level, that automatically qualifies you to be an office bearer or to run an association. It is a myth.
Yeah, yeah. Charu,
I agree with him wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
You could be a good player, but you can be a lousy administrator. And we have seen this happening again and again. Just because somebody is good in one trade or one practice doesn't mean he'll have to be good in everything that he does. And it's been proved again and again. So I don't want to get into that, but I 100% agree with what Jamie said on that score. But let's look at it this way. Look at the trust deficit that is there between your captain and your board. This is what we have led to. If there is a trust deficit, there's no point. One of them have to quit. So it's good that Virat Kohli had to quit now so that you can build a team for the future. But it's a really pathetic way to go.
Before we look back on perhaps Virat's biggest contribution, and I want to go across the table and ask each of you what you think. Just looking forward first, what does this do to the team, Charu? Because now you have a new coach. You have KL Rahul who's going to be leading the ODI series in the absence of Rohit Sharma. What happens? Who's going to be the test captain? Because Rohit doesn't have, he's relatively new in that sense to this particular format.
Well, he's actually older than Kohli. So, he's a very hard-boiled cricketer. And to just give you one of the recent examples, one of the highlights of Kohli, people will say, is the test match series win in Australia. Well, guess what? Once he left, and who was the captain at that point of time, because he left for his baby, which was a nice thing to do, is Rahane. So, this whole captaincy thing, I say once again, I rest my case. It doesn't really matter, for heaven's sake. Everybody knows their job. It does create a little bit of confusion in white ball cricket because, of course, we know that Rohit may not last too long, so they have to look for somebody else. And in red ball cricket too, because it would have been nice, ideal, had there been somebody who was a regular vice captain for, say, 4 or 5 years. Now, Rahane's position himself is a little question mark right now, maybe Rahul, whoever. But, the handover process, the baton, if it's handed over to somebody as a smooth succession, it always makes people feel, well, there's no controversy, there's no problem, let's get on with it. Now it's going to create a lot of bubbling sentiments about who, what, where, how, whom. Should it be Rishabh Pant? But he's impetuous, but he's young, but he captains a big side in the IPL, which also has massive pressure. All these guys who play for the country, barring the faster bowlers, I will say that because they kind of have a torturous workload, although Pat Cummins is proving it otherwise. they are ready to be captain. You're playing for the country because they are 10, 15, 18 of the finest cricketers in the land. They're all hard-boiled. They know the job. They're not going to give an opening batsman the ball to open the bowling. They're not going to give an opening bowler the bat to open the batting. For heaven's sake, 98% of all decisions taken on the cricket field are conventional. It's just the personality of the captain that sometimes does play a role in terms of how the team is gelling together. So they'll find somebody. He might even have a better record than Kohli in the next 5 years. You say, oh, well, that's all right then.
Well, Charu, I do ask you about the captaincy question. I did ask you first rather to rile you up over this issue more than anything else. But before I ask Jamie and Vedam itself, I just want to say that Ravi Shastri has tweeted, a man who was Virat Kohli's partner in arms for so many years. He's tweeted, and I quote, Virat, you can go with your head held high. Few have achieved what you have as captain. Definitely India's most aggressive and successful. A sad day for me personally, as this is the team India that we built together. Jamie, just before we actually talk about that, since Ravi Shastri has tweeted this, the combination of Shastri and Virat. Now, Virat just could not have that same equation with Anil Kumble. There's been discussion of whether or not he would have it with Dravid, but of course that is irrelevant now. But these two together, there was a bond, there was a respect, and there was a good working relationship.
It worked for the better part of 5 years. I think there's no point looking back and looking at what went wrong. I think for that time, the kind of person that Virat Kohli is, the personality, the ego, the aggression, it needed someone like a Ravi Shastri to understand it and to nurture it and to let it work in its own way. So I think as far as the Shastri-Kohli combination goes, yes, there were drawbacks, but overall a lot more pluses than minuses as far as that combination goes.
Vedam, I think it's also something like perhaps Justin Langer, who, a lot of the Australian players don't particularly like him and have spoken out against him, but they had that, the successes again under him have also come. But when it came to Shastri and Kohli, both in terms of temperament and both in terms of how they approached the game, there was that sync.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Shastri also had a big role to play in this, because I think he understood the situation much better than many of the others. When to allow the captain to go ahead and when to, get the team to work and bond together. And Shastri is very good in talking to people, especially the players, and geeing them up at the right time. And I think that worked well. He could handle things outside, but on the play field, Virat Kohli was the king. He's the guy who made all the decisions. And I think as a team, they work brilliantly. You never know what sort of chemistry helps, between a captain and a coach or the rest of the coaching team. But I think these two really forged a brilliant relationship. It was not as strained as, let's say, Chappell and Sourav Ganguly, but this was a lot more cohesive. I think they were both on the same page on a lot of issues, and that definitely helped. They didn't have to keep looking over their shoulder to see what the other was doing. And that's a great advantage to have in Indian cricket, because we've seen Indian cricket's history right from the beginning. And there's absolutely no synchronicity with anybody. And I think if at all this team has done very well, it's because the captain and coach have gelled very well. And they've also ensured that the team is also on the same page and they have imbibed all the right spirit. So I think the performance of both Ravi Shastri and Virat Kohli has been the greatest as far as Indian cricket is concerned.
Vedam, I took a bit of a detour once Shastri's tweet came out, but looking ahead at the Indian cricket, the captaincy conundrum, both in terms of, the test matches, the one-day matches, that is an unsettled or unanswered question, at least as far as the test matches are concerned now.
Yeah, the test match, see, the next series is against Sri Lanka in India. So it's much easier to lead. We've never had a problem when we play at home. We've always come up trumps, almost always come up trumps. So that's not the tough part. But it's an opportunity to groom a good youngster. You need to groom somebody who will be there for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years down the line. So it's a right opportunity. And I hope they groom somebody, maybe like KL Rahul or Rishabh Pant if they want to groom him. It has to be somebody who will play for a long time for Indian cricket. It has to be somebody like that. And I think it's a good time that we're doing it against Sri Lanka at home. And it should be easy. We have all the ammunition that we need in terms of bowling and batting to play at home and win. And I think they should make use of it and allow a new captain to slip into that role comfortably.
Jamie?
Like you earlier asked about what would Virat Kohli's legacy be. I think I'd rather wrap it up on that. I think I'm going to give you a positive and a negative. The positive is the fact that in a time when the T20 game was taking over the sport, the way that Virat Kohli infused the importance of Test cricket as the format which he wanted to be the best and his team, and then to maintain that for the better part of 4 years, I think that would be seen as his biggest contribution to Indian cricket team. Alongside that, something which all three of us here have talked about is this: why under Virat Kohli's time was no youngster being groomed? It's almost like ye mera time hai, main Virat Kohli hu. It doesn't matter who's behind. I think the one failure of him and Shastri as a combination during this whole last 6 years was failing to pick someone young. Why is Rohit Sharma, who barely has another year and a half left of international cricket across format, the fact that VCI has gone to him, it says that Virat Kohli failed to identify someone at the age of 24 and said, by the time he's 30, where would he be? That's my 2 cents on Virat Kohli's legacy.
So much is said about Virat Kohli's aggression, and I mention this quite often. Virat Kohli is also the man who probably looks the opposition captain in the eye and has a bit to say to them, but he's also at the same time the person who, when Indian fans are jeering Steve Smith, says, don't do this, please, he's not a cheat forever, please, cheer him on. Charu.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a very personal thing. Personally, I'm the kind of guy who appreciates non-aggressive tactics on the field, because there are so many other ways to prove your superiority, and you don't have to go down that lane, because I keep saying the Indian captain particularly, or Indian cricketers, they are huge role models. They're ambassadors of the country and how the country wishes to project itself as a general culture and attitude. So, people are individually sort of different, and you mentioned Shastri's tweet, and everything he said about Kohli was correct, because they are like twins. I mean, they are very similar personalities, and which is why as a coach you don't have to do too much. You don't have to color the captain at all. In terms of tactics, once again, it's on the field. So do aggressive tactics work better than non-aggressive tactics? There's absolutely zero to prove that, and it's left to the individual. I'm not a big fan, no. I'd rather see the Indian cricketers go out there, and I'm not being old-fashioned at all, I hope, but behave in such an exemplary fashion that all young cricketers growing up think, that's the way to be. And I'd love a captain or cricketers to leave that legacy behind, where youngsters are just better behaved. There's, good guys win also. Roger Federer, he doesn't go in there and, you hit somebody or do something wrong or whatever, to take one small example. But, again, people will think I'm naive. You don't have to, these guys are the best cricketers in the land. Do you have to really tell them, come on, guys, for heaven's sake, they know exactly what to do. The last thing you should do is try and irritate them by a hyper-aggression or whatever else. But, to each their own.
I just have one final question. I want to go around with all of you on this one. One lasting image, one lasting memory, or one lasting moment in Virat Kohli's career, at least his Test captaincy, he's still not retiring just yet, that stays with you. Jamie, I'll start off with you.
Like I said, there's so many highs that Virat Kohli has led, and I want to add, I absolutely agree with what Charu is saying. A lot of it, I have been very, very critical of Virat Kohli's captaincy for these same reasons, and I hope that his lasting image is not the guy leaning into the mic and being such. I don't want to even use the word. It was totally not called for. But I think if you talk about an image of Virat Kohli, it's him holding the ICC #1 mace at the end of, or the starting of every year for 4 years. He really, at a time when he could have been swayed by T20 cricket, and the whole ecosystem has really bought into having more T20s in a year, him saying, Test cricket is something I grew up wanting to excel in, and now I want to put this on the map. So any image of him holding any series trophy in Test cricket, all put together, that for me is the lasting impression of Virat Kohli, the Test captain.
Vedam?
See, okay, John McEnroe, since Charu used a tennis terminology, John McEnroe called it rage for perfection. We were perfectly happy as somebody had a rage for perfection. But look at it this way, he was able to boost the morale of the team. He did. The laws of the game are very clear, The spirit of the game is encoded into the laws of the game. It's not like before you could get away with anything. We have seen umpires being kicked, the opposition being kicked, the stumps being kicked, and somebody trying to hit somebody else with a bat. We've seen all this happening earlier. But today, cricket is a non-contact sport. And so the laws are also very clearly encoded. If you have brought the spirit of the game into disrepute, then there are match referees and others to take action. And that hasn't happened with Virat Kohli. Maybe maybe the television cameras love him. Maybe the marketing people love him. And he's not transgressed. You might say that he shouted into the mic. Well, I don't know how many people were comfortable with that, but many people were also not comfortable with what happened even before that, the way they showed the replay, So I think somewhere maybe you could say that he must have crossed the line here and there, but what he always brought out was aggression. Don't forget, he didn't back out of any battle. He didn't say the wicket is green, so I won't play. He didn't say I will not play against Pakistan when they have so many fast bowlers. He didn't do that. He took everybody chest on, and that's a great thing. And because the captain was willing to put his body, his reputation, everything on the line, the others followed suit. And that is what we need to think of again and again and again. How predecessors have worked out, how they have handled situations, and how he has handled situations. Like you correctly said, he never backed down from a fight. When I say fight, in an aggressive thing, he was stood face to face, toe to toe with the fast bowlers and ensured that he gave as good as he got. Let's put it that way. He gave as good as he got, and let's not be apologetic about it.
Vedam, I noticed a little dig that you made at Saurav Ganguly, but I also want to say, and I won't lie about it, since I have all three of you, I'm very, very tempted to go around the table and ask everyone their views on Novak Djokovic as well, but I'll pin that for now. Charu, final word to you on Virat Kohli, his legacy, and then one lasting image or one lasting memory you have.
Well, thanks. I thought you might have just forgotten about this, but no, I do think that what he brought to the team as a very special ingredient was this hyper fitness regime. I think he's one of the fittest sports persons in India at this point of time. He focused on that very independently and individually, and then ensured that the rest of the team followed in that very important aspect of sport, which is the physical athleticism aspect of sport. So I think that's a major addition to what the Indians are doing in the cricket field now. I don't think we are too far behind other major international teams, especially the youngsters coming in are as fit as most other international teams, which is a big jump up from the past. And I would certainly like to credit Kohli with leading by example there for sure.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for speaking to Mirror Now. I really appreciate you joining us this Saturday evening for an announcement that not many of us saw coming and are still surprised and still reeling under. Charu, Vedam, Jamie, thank you so much for speaking to Mirror Now. As you can imagine, there are several reactions pouring into Virat Kohli's resignation, one of whom is Rajiv Shukla, the BCCI's Rajiv Shukla. Let's hear what he had to say.
Well, we at BCCI, we respect his decision. I mean, he decided to, quit Test captaincy. So we respect his decision because we should respect, whatever a player thinks. So that's why we respect that. And his contribution to Indian cricket has been immense. And as a Test captain, he got us maximum number of victories. So that way, if you see that he was the most successful captain. So we all respect for that. And I hope and I think that he will continue to contribute as a player in Team India, and his contribution will continue for Indian cricket.
Slipping into a short break now, but we have some more news regarding this Virat Kohli and his sudden captaincy resignation, so stay tuned. Why did Virat Kohli resign? How did he resign? Well, my colleague Karishma has got some inside details for us. Karishma, over to you.
Well, yes, Aarti, we've managed to get some inside details. What we're given to understand is that Virat Kohli, right after the match yesterday, spoke to Rahul Dravid, discussed the test series result that India lost, and then informed him about his decision to relinquish the test captaincy. There was no discussion with the teammates. And then today, in the afternoon, Indian Standard Time, Virat Kohli called up the BCCI secretary, Jay Shah, and apprised him of the situation and that it was his desire to step down as the test captain as well. And Jay Shah, in that moment itself, accepting the resignation of Virat Kohli as India's test captain. So this is how it all happened. Virat Kohli first reaching out to the new head coach of the Indian cricket team, Rahul Dravid, and informing him about his decision to relinquish test captaincy, and then informing the BCCI secretary today in the afternoon about deciding to step down from the test captaincy. So, remember, Virat Kohli is one of India's greatest test captains ever. 68 matches that he has led the Indian cricket team in. 40 he has won. 16 have been away wins, and 24 of them have been home wins. So clearly a very, very stellar record for Virat Kohli. But finally, Virat Kohli has decided to move on, and in all likelihood, it is going to be Rohit Sharma that is going to take over from Virat Kohli the same way he took over from MS Dhoni.
In fact, Karishma, I was just going to come to that. What are the options ahead of the BCCI when it comes to selection? We have Sri Lanka is coming to India sometime soon, but layout, who are the potentials that we could be looking at?
Well, Aarti, leading the race is obviously going to be Rohit Sharma for the simple reason that he was selected as the vice captain for the South Africa Test series. He had a hamstring injury because of which he could not be a part of this series. So obviously, the vice captain would have performed the captain duties in absence of Virat Kohli at any given point in time. So clearly, Rohit Sharma is going to be the obvious choice for captaincy, and he will eventually then become the captain of Indian cricket team in all formats. But if the selectors decide otherwise and want to choose a separate test captain, then another option that could possibly give Rohit Sharma a run for his money is going to be KL Rahul, who has led the team in the second test in the South African series in the absence of Virat Kohli when he was suffering from a back spasm. But from what we understand, Rohit Sharma looks to be the very obvious choice for the test captaincy as well. But yes, it is going to be up to the selectors whether they want to go with the obvious choice or have fresh debate and discussion over who should be India's test captain. But yes, Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul, so to say, are the only two names that are going to pop up in the selectors' discussion as well.
Karishma, thank you so much for that. We're going to slip into a short break now. Of course, Virat Kohli's surprise resignation, still something that several will be talking about for days to come.